Have you ever stopped to consider how the smallest thoughts you entertain each day might be quietly shaping your entire future? It's easy to overlook the power of our mental routines, those brief, almost automatic patterns of thinking that replay in the background of our minds. Yet it's these very habits, often formed without our conscious awareness, that accumulate over time into the architecture of our character, our decisions, and ultimately, the life we lead. The ancient Stoics understood this better than anyone. Thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus dedicated their lives to studying the inner workings of the human mind, and they repeatedly emphasized that true transformation begins not with grand, sweeping gestures, but with the disciplined cultivation of our daily thoughts. As Seneca wisely noted, the mind is never right unless it is at peace with itself, and yet how rarely do we pause to question the quality of the thoughts we entertain. This isn't just philosophy, it's a practical blueprint for living with greater intention. Every one of us carries mental habits, some serving us, others holding us back. Maybe you tend to dwell on past mistakes, or perhaps you often imagine worst-case scenarios before they even happen. Maybe you compare yourself to others, or rush through your days without truly pausing to reflect. Whatever your patterns may be, they are actively writing the story of your future, one thought at a time. The good news is you have the power to rewrite that story. And that's exactly what we're going to explore together. In this video, we'll dive into 21 mental habits deeply rooted in Stoic wisdom that can quietly but profoundly reshape your future. These aren't abstract ideas, they are practical, actionable practices used for centuries to build resilience, clarity, and a stronger sense of purpose. From starting your day with intention to ending it with reflection, from learning how to focus only on what you can control to turning obstacles into opportunities, each habit offers a way to reclaim agency over your mind and, by extension, your life. So I invite you to ask yourself, which of your current mental habits are quietly shaping your destiny? And what could your future look like if you began intentionally cultivating ones designed not just to help you cope, but to help you thrive? Let's begin. So how do you typically start your mornings? Do you reach for your phone immediately, checking notifications and emails, letting the outside world dictate your initial thoughts? Or do you take a moment, just a few minutes, to set your own intentional tone for the day ahead? For the Stoics, how we begin our day was not a trivial matter, it was a foundational practice. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful men, began his days not by reacting to external demands, but by retreating into his own mind for a period of purposeful reflection. He called this his morning meditation, a quiet time to prepare his mind for whatever might come. In his personal writings, now known as Meditations, he advised himself to rise each day and say, "I shall meet today with meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, and unsociable people. They are all so because they do not know the good from the evil." This wasn't pessimism, it was profound psychological preparation. By visualizing potential challenges and reaffirming his core virtues, he wasn't bracing for a bad day, he was fortifying his mind to handle any day with wisdom and calm. This practice of morning reflection is about more than just positive thinking. It's a strategic rehearsal for reality. You are essentially sitting down with your future self and asking a simple but powerful question. What could today throw at me, and how will I choose to respond with character and purpose? Imagine a professional about to head into a high-stakes meeting. Instead of just worrying about it, they take 5 minutes in the morning to mentally walk through it. They visualize staying calm if a colleague becomes difficult. They reaffirm their intention to listen actively and speak with clarity. and they remind themselves that their worth isn't tied to the meeting's outcome, only their effort and integrity. This mental rehearsal doesn't change the external events, but it completely transforms their internal readiness. It shifts them from a state of passive reaction to one of active, virtuous agency. The beauty of this habit is its simplicity and adaptability. You don't need to be a Roman emperor to do it. It simply requires a few quiet minutes before the rush of the day begins. It's a chance to connect with what truly matters to you, your values, before the world starts shouting its endless demands. So as you consider integrating this first Stoic habit, ask yourself this: what is one virtue you would want to embody today? Perhaps it's patience with your children, courage in a difficult conversation, or compassion for a struggling co-worker. How might taking just 5 minutes each morning to reflect on that virtue change the way you move through your day? Now, as the day winds down and you prepare to rest, how often do you actually pause to reflect on what just unfolded? In our rush to disconnect and escape into sleep, we often miss one of the most powerful opportunities for growth offered to us: the quiet moments of the evening. This is where the second Stoic habit comes into play, the evening review. It is the natural bookend to the morning reflection, a practice the Stoics considered non-negotiable for anyone serious about self-improvement. Seneca, in his letters to his friend Lucilius, was emphatic about this daily ritual. He wrote, "I make use of this privilege and daily plead my cause before myself. When the light has been taken away and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and retrace all my actions and words. I conceal nothing from myself, I pass nothing by." This wasn't about self-criticism or dwelling on errors. It was a calm, objective audit of the day for the sole purpose of learning. Think of this review as a gentle but honest conversation with yourself. You're not a judge delivering a verdict, but a coach reviewing game footage. The process is beautifully simple. You ask yourself 3 fundamental questions rooted in Stoic thought. First, what did I do well today? Where did I act with courage, justice, wisdom, or temperance? Acknowledging these moments reinforces positive behavior. Second, what could I have done better? This is not about listing failures, but identifying specific moments where your reaction was not aligned with your values. And third, what was entirely outside of my control? This final question is crucial for releasing the mental baggage of the day: the traffic jam, the rude comment from a stranger, the unexpected change in plans. By categorizing these events as external, you free yourself from the burden of having to control the uncontrollable. Let's make this tangible. Imagine someone had a difficult conversation with a coworker earlier in the day. During their evening review, they replay the interaction in their mind. They recognize that while their points were valid, their tone became sharp and defensive when challenged. Instead of just feeling guilty, they analyze it through a Stoic lens. They see that their impulsive reaction was rooted in a desire to be seen as right, something outside their complete control. What was within their control was their response. They realize a more virtuous approach would have been to listen fully, acknowledge the other's perspective, and then calmly state their own. This isn't about rewriting history, it's about gathering data for the future. The next time a similar situation arises, that mental note will be there, allowing them to choose a more measured, effective response. This practice transforms ordinary days into a continuous curriculum for living wisely. It ensures that no experience, however frustrating or mundane, is ever wasted. Every interaction becomes a lesson, every challenge a test of character, and every evening a chance to become slightly wiser than you were that morning. So as you consider this habit, take a moment to look back on your own day. Can you recall one specific moment where you reacted impulsively, perhaps with frustration, anxiety, or anger. Play that moment back in your mind with a gentle curiosity. What was the underlying trigger? What virtue could you have called upon in that moment? And how might this simple act of evening reflection help you respond with greater wisdom tomorrow? Now consider for a moment how much of your daily mental energy is spent on things you have absolutely no power to change. The weather, the opinions of others, the past, the traffic, the outcome of a project at work. So much of what we worry about and struggle against lies entirely beyond our command. This is perhaps the single most liberating insight Stoicism offers, and it forms the foundation of our third mental habit, the practice of rigorously differentiating between what is within our control and what is not. The ancient teacher Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and found profound freedom through philosophy, framed this as the central task of a good life. He opens his famous handbook with a statement of breathtaking clarity. Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. This is the Stoic dichotomy of control. It's not a complex philosophical puzzle. It's a practical sorting tool for your mind. On one side of the line, you place your own judgments, your values, your intentions, your efforts, and your actions, the inner world of your character. This is your sovereign territory. On the other side of the line, you place everything else, your body's health, your wealth, your social status, how others behave, and the final results of your efforts. These are externals. They are not unimportant, but they are not ultimately up to you. The profound anxiety reduction comes from finally, decisively, stopping the futile attempt to control what is on the other side of that line. You stop trying to manage other people's opinions. You release the white-knuckle grip on specific outcomes. You cease to be shocked or derailed by events you could not have prevented. Instead, you pour all of your energy and attention into the one thing you truly can command, your own voluntary choices and responses. Let's make this immediately practical with a scenario everyone knows. Imagine you have a crucial job interview scheduled for 10 a.m. across town. You can spend the morning anxiously refreshing the weather app, worrying about the traffic reports, and fretting over whether the interviewer will like you. But according to the dichotomy of control, the weather, the traffic, and the interviewer's personal preferences are all externals. They are not within your power. Your mental energy is being wasted on the wrong side of the line. The Stoic approach would be to focus exclusively on what is within your control. You can prepare thoroughly for the interview questions. You can choose to leave 30 minutes early to account for potential delays. You can decide to present yourself with honesty and integrity. You can resolve to accept the outcome with equanimity, knowing you did your best. Your effort is yours, the result is not. This shift in focus doesn't guarantee you'll get the job, but it guarantees you won't be emotionally devastated if you don't. It transforms the experience from a source of anxiety into an exercise in virtue, regardless of the outcome. The power of this habit lies in its daily application. It turns moments of frustration into moments of clarity. A delayed flight becomes an opportunity to practice patience rather than a trigger for rage. A critical comment becomes a chance to examine its truth without being wounded by its tone. By continually asking, "Is this within my control?" you train your mind to invest its precious resources where they can actually make a difference in building a resilient and virtuous character. So take a brief pause and bring to mind 3 things that have been occupying your thoughts lately, perhaps even causing you worry. Write them down mentally or on paper. Now honestly assess each one. Is it something within your own power to change directly, like your effort or your attitude? Or is it an external outcome, like a specific result or another person's action? This simple act of categorization is the first step toward reclaiming a tremendous amount of your mental energy and redirecting it toward what truly matters. History offers us a powerful image. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman world, spending his nights in a military tent on the frigid German frontier, battling illness and the constant threat of invasion, all while writing in his private journal. He wasn't complaining, he was reframing. He saw those very obstacles not as curses, but as the necessary raw material for building his own character. This is the essence of our fourth mental habit, the conscious practice of embracing obstacles as opportunities. For the Stoics, a barrier was never just a barrier. It was the only real gymnasium where virtues like courage, patience, and resilience could be exercised and strengthened. They believed that a life without challenges would be like a blade that never sees a whetstone. It would remain dull and useless. An obstacle, therefore, is not an impediment to the path, it is the path. It is the precise training you need for the person you are meant to become. This radical reframing is captured perfectly in one of the most famous passages from Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. He writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't a catchy motivational slogan. It's a profound statement of practical psychology. He is telling us that the very thing blocking our progress contains within it the seeds of our solution, if only we shift our perception. A rock in the middle of a stream doesn't stop the water. It simply forces the water to find a new path, often creating a more interesting and powerful current in the process. Our mental habits work the same way. The obstacle forces us to adapt, to innovate, to dig deeper into our reserves of strength and creativity than we would have if everything had gone smoothly. The obstacle, therefore, doesn't block our growth, it actively fuels it. Let's bring this ancient idea into a modern context. Imagine receiving a rejection email for a job you are genuinely excited about. The initial, automatic reaction is one of disappointment, maybe even a blow to your self-confidence. You might be tempted to see it as a definitive statement on your worth or abilities. But the Stoic habit of reframing would invite you to engage with this obstacle differently. This rejection is not within your control. The hiring manager's decision is an external event. What is within your control is your perception of it and your subsequent action. This no could be a hidden yes to something else. Perhaps it forces you to re-evaluate your career path and realize that job wasn't the perfect fit you initially thought. Maybe it opens up mental space to apply for a more challenging role you were hesitating about. Or perhaps it simply provides the necessary practice in handling professional disappointment with grace, a skill that is invaluable for long-term success. The obstacle of the rejection hasn't halted your progress. It has become the very thing that advances it, forcing a necessary and beneficial pivot. This habit transforms your entire relationship with difficulty. A difficult person in your life is no longer just a source of frustration. They become your personal trainer in patience and understanding. A financial setback is not merely a crisis, it's a masterclass in frugality and re-evaluating what truly holds value. A project that fails spectacularly is not a waste of time. It's a compressed education in what doesn't work, providing invaluable data for your next attempt. The event itself is neutral. It is your judgment of it, your voluntary choice to label it as a catastrophe or an opportunity, that determines its ultimate effect on your life. So I invite you to bring to mind a recent setback, something that felt like a genuine obstacle. It could be a personal disagreement, a missed deadline, or an unexpected change of plans. Now, instead of focusing on the frustration it caused, ask yourself this Stoic question: how can this very thing that stands in my way actually become the way forward? What strength might it be inviting me to develop? What better path might it be secretly clearing for me? But doesn't it seem completely counterintuitive that deliberately imagining the worst things that could happen might actually make you less afraid of them? Our modern culture is practically built on the opposite idea: to avoid negative thoughts, to focus on the positive, to visualize success. Yet the Stoics, and Seneca in particular, championed a powerful mental habit that turns this completely on its head. They called it premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. This is not about pessimism or fostering anxiety. It is a calculated exercise in emotional inoculation. By periodically and rationally visualizing potential losses, setbacks, or difficulties, we accomplish two profound things. We rob future adversity of its element of surprise, which is often the source of its greatest shock and pain, and we simultaneously ignite a deep, heartfelt appreciation for the ordinary blessings we currently enjoy but so often take for granted. Seneca, who lived a life of immense wealth and influence that could have easily made him soft and entitled, was a staunch advocate of this practice. He understood that comfort breeds complacency, and complacency is the enemy of resilience. In one of his letters, he offers this crucial insight: he who has been expecting to be hit is less aggrieved when he is hit. He is telling us that the blow itself is not what causes the most suffering. It is the shock of the unexpected blow. By mentally rehearsing adversity, we are not attracting it. We are building a psychological immune system capable of handling it with far greater composure. Seneca would even practice this himself, imagining the loss of his status, his wealth, or his family. He wasn't doing this to be morbid. He was doing it to realize a fundamental truth: that he could endure such losses and that, until they happened, his life was filled with gifts he should not overlook. Let's make this incredibly practical. Think about something you use and rely on every single day without a second thought: your smartphone, for instance. Now take a moment and actually visualize what it would be like to lose it. Not in a panicked way, but in a calm, reasoned way. The phone is gone. What would you actually do? You would survive. You would use a computer or borrow a phone to contact your provider. You would begin the process of replacing it, and you would likely feel a temporary inconvenience. But in that moment of imagined loss, something else happens. You suddenly become acutely aware of the incredible utility and convenience that little device provides you right now. The practice of negative visualization instantly transforms that ordinary object from something you expect into something you appreciate. This same exercise can be applied to your health, your job, your relationships, or your home. You don't visualize the loss because you want it to happen. You visualize it so you can truly see what you have. This mental rehearsal also prepares you to handle common fears with a level of calm that would otherwise be impossible. Consider the very common fear of public speaking. Most people's anxiety stems from imagining everything that could go wrong. They'll forget their words, the audience will be bored, they'll be judged. The typical advice is to stop thinking about that and just picture success. The Stoic approach is different and in many ways more effective. It invites you to lean into the fear. Mentally rehearse the worst-case scenario. Okay, you forget your next point. What then? You would pause, take a breath, glance at your notes, and continue. The world does not end. The audience is generally sympathetic. Now imagine someone in the audience looking unimpressed. So what? Their opinion is an external you cannot control. Your own effort and integrity are what matter. By walking through the very thing you fear, you systematically disarm it. You realize that even the worst outcome is manageable. You are not trying to eliminate the nervous energy. but you are transforming it from a paralyzing fear into focused anticipation. So I encourage you to try this profound Stoic exercise today. Bring to mind a common anxiety or a mild fear you occasionally grapple with. It could be the fear of making a mistake at work or the nervousness before a difficult conversation. Now, instead of pushing the negative thoughts away, invite them in for a rational conversation. Walk through the scenario step by step. If the thing you fear actually happened, what would your next step be? How would you handle it? What part of it is within your control to influence? You will likely find that the monster under the bed, when examined calmly under the light of reason, is far less terrifying than the shadow it cast in the dark. This practice builds not a fearful mind, but a fearless one, a mind prepared for reality and deeply grateful for the present peace it currently holds. Think about the last time you felt truly overwhelmed. Perhaps it was a sudden influx of demands at work, a barrage of bad news from the media, or a personal conflict that seemed to hijack your entire emotional state. In those moments, the external world feels like a storm, and we are small boats being tossed by waves we cannot control. This is the exact human experience the Stoics sought to address with our sixth mental habit, the practice of cultivating what Marcus Aurelius poetically termed the inner citadel. He envisioned the mind not as a vulnerable open field, but as a fortified fortress, a place of absolute calm and safety that we can retreat into at any moment, regardless of the chaos swirling outside its walls. The chaos itself is inevitable. It is the nature of life. But our being disturbed by that chaos is entirely optional. It is a choice we make when we forget that we possess this inner stronghold. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire constantly on the brink of war and internal strife, wrote extensively about this concept in his private journals. He reminds himself, and by extension all of us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the foundational principle of the inner citadel. The strength doesn't come from changing the world to be less chaotic. It comes from the unshakable knowledge that the world's chaos cannot penetrate your inner sanctum unless you willingly open the gates and invite it in. Your judgments, your values, your character, these are the bricks and mortar of this fortress. External events are just weather patterns. They can rage and thunder outside, but within the citadel you remain safe, observant, and at peace. This is the ultimate application of the dichotomy of control, transforming it from an intellectual idea into a lived, felt experience of tranquility. Let's translate this ancient concept into a modern scenario we can all relate to. Imagine you're in a high-pressure work meeting. Tensions are rising, voices are becoming sharp, and personal criticisms are starting to fly across the table. The automatic, habitual response is to get swept up in the emotional current, to become defensive, to argue louder, to feel your heart race and your anger flare. This is the storm. Now, imagine instead that you have been practicing building your inner citadel. In the middle of this tension, you consciously take a mental half-step back. You don't physically leave, you simply retreat inward for a moment of clarity. You observe the chaos not as a participant, but from the quiet battlements of your own mind. You ask yourself the Stoic questions: what here is truly within my control? I cannot control my colleagues' harsh words or the elevated stress levels. But I can absolutely control my own response. I can choose to listen instead of react. I can choose to respond with reason rather than with emotion. I can anchor myself in the virtue of patience and the value of finding a solution. By doing this, you are not ignoring the problem. You are addressing it from a place of immense power and stability. You become the calm in the center of the storm, and that calmness often becomes the most influential force in the room. This habit is a form of profound mindfulness, but with a distinctly Stoic purpose. It's not about emptying the mind, but about filling it with the right things, your core principles. Your citadel is built virtue by virtue. Each time you choose patience over irritation or courage over fear, you strengthen the walls. Each time you remember that your self-worth is not determined by external praise or criticism, you reinforce the foundation. The goal is to make this retreat so practiced that it becomes instantaneous, your default response to any form of turbulence. So I want you to take a moment and identify one external disturbance that frequently challenges your peace. It might be the constant ping of notifications, the complaining of a family member, or the anxiety of an upcoming deadline. Now, rather than seeing it as something that happens to you, see it as an invitation to visit your inner citadel. How would you respond to this same event if you were observing it from a place of unshakable inner calm? What single virtue could you call upon to guard your peace? The doorway to that fortress is always open. You just have to choose to step inside. But what if the very comfort we relentlessly pursue is actually making us weaker? We live in an age of unprecedented convenience, where temperature-controlled environments, instant meals, and on-demand entertainment are the norm. We've engineered much of the discomfort out of daily life, and while that seems like progress, the Stoics would argue we've inadvertently engineered the resilience out of our character. This brings us to our seventh mental habit, a profoundly counterintuitive practice: the deliberate and voluntary embrace of discomfort. Thinkers like Musonius Rufus, a major Stoic teacher, didn't see this as a form of self-punishment, but as essential training for the soul. He taught that by willingly stepping into slight hardship, we accomplish two vital things. We toughen our minds against the inevitable adversities that life will throw our way, and we simultaneously break the subtle but powerful chains of our attachment to luxury and ease. We prove to ourselves that we are not fragile creatures who need perfect conditions to be okay. Epictetus, who studied under Musonius Rufus, framed this idea with his characteristic bluntness. He said, "But neither a bull nor a noble-spirited man comes to be what he is all at once. He must undertake hard winter training and prepare himself, and not propel himself rashly into what is not appropriate for him." That hard winter training is the key. The Stoic isn't advocating for a life of miserable asceticism. They are promoting a series of calculated drills, a psychological boot camp, where you voluntarily place yourself in slightly challenging situations to remind your body and mind of their own innate strength. You are not trying to become a person who loves being uncomfortable. You are becoming a person who is unafraid of it. This practice shrinks fear and expands your sense of personal freedom, because you are no longer a slave to the constant need for perfect conditions. The modern applications of this ancient practice are both simple and powerful. It doesn't require moving into a cave or giving away all your possessions. It's about small, intentional acts of self-discipline that interrupt your automatic pursuit of comfort. For instance, you might choose to take a cold shower for the final 60 seconds of your morning routine. That initial shock of cold water is a masterclass in mental fortitude. Your entire body will scream to get out, but if you consciously choose to stay, you are practicing the exact same muscle used to stay calm during a stressful conversation or to persist in a difficult workout. You are learning that the feeling of discomfort is a signal, not a stop sign. Another example is voluntary hunger, skipping a single meal or delaying lunch by an hour. This isn't about dieting, it's about breaking the automatic habit of eating the moment you feel a pang of hunger. It teaches you that you can endure the sensation and that your body is far more resilient than you give it credit for. You could walk instead of drive, sit on the floor instead of the couch, or spend an evening without digital screens. The specific act is less important than the intention behind it, to willingly choose a minor hardship for the sake of building a major strength. This habit also cultivates a deep and genuine appreciation for the comforts we so often take for granted. That first sip of warm coffee after a brisk walk in the cold, the feeling of a warm bed after a day of voluntary simplicity, these pleasures become intensely vivid when they are not constant entitlements but occasional rewards. By periodically saying no to comfort, you learn to say a more meaningful and grateful yes when you do choose it. You break the cycle of taking the ordinary miracles of modern life for granted. So this week, I challenge you to incorporate this Stoic drill into your routine. Choose one small, voluntary discomfort. It could be as simple as leaving your phone in another room for an hour, drinking only water with your meals, or taking the stairs instead of the elevator. The goal is not to suffer, but to observe. Notice the initial resistance your mind throws up. Observe the urge to quit, and then choose to continue anyway. Afterwards, take a moment to reflect. How did it feel? What did it teach you about your own capacity for endurance? This small act is a direct investment in your future resilience, a deposit into the bank of your inner fortitude that will pay dividends when real adversity, not the voluntary kind, inevitably comes calling. But what does it truly mean to live naturally in our complex modern world? We often hear this phrase used in everything from diet trends to minimalist lifestyles. But for the Stoics, living according to nature was the very cornerstone of their entire philosophy, and it had nothing to do with eating organic food or moving off the grid. When Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, and his successors like Marcus Aurelius spoke of this concept, they were pointing toward a far more profound alignment. For them, to live in accordance with nature meant to live in harmony with our own highest faculty, our rational, virtuous mind, and to recognize our role within the larger, rational structure of the cosmos itself. It is about understanding that we are not isolated individuals acting on a random stage, but integral participants in a vast, interconnected whole. Our nature as human beings is defined by our capacity for reason, our innate social impulse to cooperate, and our ability to act with justice and compassion. To act against these core attributes, to be irrational, to be cruel, to be selfish, is to live contrary to our own nature, and thus to create our own suffering. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this theme in his meditations, seeking to ground himself in this larger perspective. He wrote, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee," a beautiful and simple analogy for this Stoic ideal. The bee cannot thrive if it acts only for itself, damaging the hive. Its own well-being is inextricably linked to the health of the entire swarm. In the same way, our personal good cannot be separated from the common good. Our rational nature is a fragment of the universal reason that orders the cosmos. So when we act with virtue, we are not just following a personal moral code. We are aligning ourselves with the fundamental logic of existence. This is why the Stoics placed such immense importance on virtues like wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These weren't arbitrary rules, they were the observable principles of a nature that is both rational and social. To live against these virtues is like a fish trying to live out of water. It is a struggle against the very element that sustains it. Let's bring this beautifully abstract idea down to a concrete level we can all relate to: the modern workplace. Imagine you are working on a team project, and you discover an easy way to claim credit for a collective success, subtly overshadowing a colleague's contribution. The temptation is there. It might lead to a promotion, a bonus, or simply the ego boost of being seen as the star performer. Acting on that impulse would be a clear example of living against nature. It is irrational because it damages the trust and cohesion of your team, which are essential for long-term success. It is unjust because it takes what does not rightfully belong to you. It is contrary to our social nature because it prioritizes the self over the community. The Stoic choice, the choice in accordance with nature, would be to act with integrity. This might mean openly acknowledging your colleagues' work, sharing the credit fairly, and understanding that your own success is deeply tied to the health and success of your entire team. This isn't about being a pushover. It is about being rational and recognizing that true, lasting success is built on a foundation of trust and cooperation, not on short-sighted self-promotion. This principle extends into every corner of our lives. Choosing patience with a frustrated child instead of responding with anger is an act of aligning with our rational and social nature. Deciding to be honest in a situation where a lie would be easier is a choice for cosmic harmony over personal convenience. Even something as simple as resisting the impulse to buy something we don't need, practicing temperance, is a way of living according to nature by refusing to be a slave to irrational desires. The goal is to make our actions a conscious reflection of the best within us, and in doing so, to find our place in the larger order of things. This alignment brings a profound sense of peace, not because the external world becomes perfect, but because we are no longer at war with ourselves and our role within it. So I invite you to turn this lens inward for a moment. Look at your own life, at your routines, your relationships, and your decisions. Can you identify one area, perhaps a recurring conflict, a persistent habit, or a daily choice, where your actions feel out of sync with your better nature? Where does reason feel clouded by impulse, or where does your desire for personal gain conflict with the common good? What would it look like to take one small step today toward bringing that area back into alignment? It's a common human tendency to draw lines in the sand, to see ourselves as separate from the person in the next car, the colleague in a different department, or even the family member with opposing views. We build invisible walls of us and them, a mental habit that often leads to isolation, misunderstanding, and unnecessary conflict. But this instinct toward separation runs completely contrary to a foundational Stoic principle, one that invites us into our ninth mental habit, the conscious practice of empathy and cosmopolitanism. This isn't the modern idea of cosmopolitanism as being worldly or well-traveled. For the Stoics, it was a radical philosophical stance. It meant viewing yourself not merely as a citizen of your town or your country, but as a citizen of the entire cosmos, the Cosmopolites. This perspective forces a profound shift. Every human being you meet, regardless of their background, beliefs, or behavior, is fundamentally your kin, a fellow citizen in the vast, interconnected city of the world. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled over a vast empire of diverse cultures and peoples, constantly reminded himself of this truth to govern with wisdom and compassion. In his meditations, he offers a powerful image that captures this idea perfectly. He writes, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." Think about the profound simplicity of that statement. A single bee cannot thrive if its actions harm the hive. Its well-being is inextricably linked to the health of the entire swarm. In the same way, our personal flourishing is deeply connected to the well-being of our human community. To act with selfishness or malice toward another is, in the Stoic view, an irrational act. It's like a bee trying to sabotage its own hive. This empathetic connection isn't about sentimental feeling. It's a rational recognition of our shared nature and our mutual dependence. When we see someone acting poorly, instead of responding with immediate anger or judgment, the Stoic asks us to see a fellow citizen who is misguided, who is acting from their own place of pain or ignorance, and who is, in their own flawed way, also trying to find their way in the world. This practice moves from a beautiful philosophy to a tangible tool in the heat of a moment of frustration. Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off in traffic. The automatic, habitual response is to feel a surge of anger, to label the other driver as reckless, selfish, or incompetent. This reaction immediately creates a story of separation. You are the wronged party, they are the villain. Now apply the Stoic habit of cosmopolitan empathy. Instead of clinging to that initial judgment, you take a breath and consciously try to see the situation from their perspective. You don't know their story. Perhaps they are rushing to the hospital, distracted by a personal emergency, or simply having a terrible day and acting out of character. This isn't about excusing dangerous driving, it's about understanding the humanity behind the action. By doing this, you accomplish something remarkable. You disarm your own anger. The event shifts from a personal affront to a neutral occurrence involving another flawed human being. You might still take evasive action, but you do so from a place of calm alertness, not furious indignation. This small mental shift prevents the incident from poisoning your mood for the next hour, saving you a tremendous amount of mental energy and preserving your inner peace. This same principle can transform our most challenging personal relationships. Consider a disagreement with a coworker who constantly dismisses your ideas. It's easy to build a narrative that they are jealous, insecure, or simply difficult, but empathy asks you to go deeper. What might be driving their behavior? Maybe they feel threatened by change, or they are under immense pressure from their own boss and are acting out of fear. Perhaps they have a completely different communication style that you've misread. When you make the effort to understand their perspective, not to agree with it, but to understand it, you change the entire dynamic of the interaction. You can approach them not as an adversary to be defeated, but as a partner with a different viewpoint to be understood. This doesn't guarantee resolution, but it guarantees that you will respond from a place of virtue, with patience, understanding, and a genuine desire for the common good of the team, the modern-day hive. So I encourage you to bring to mind someone you currently find difficult, someone you perhaps have a solid mental wall built against. For just a few moments, try to step behind that wall. Make a conscious effort to see the world through their eyes. What fears might be motivating them? What past experiences have shaped their behavior? What unspoken pressures might they be under? You may not have a breakthrough, but you will have practiced the Stoic art of cosmopolitan empathy. And in doing so, you will have strengthened the bonds of our shared human community, starting with your own peace of mind. How often do you find your mind drifting far from where your body actually is, replaying a conversation from yesterday with a cringe of regret or anxiously rehearsing a meeting that's still a week away? We spend an enormous portion of our lives lost in these mental time zones, borrowing trouble from a future that may never come or paying emotional debts to a past that cannot be changed. This mental time travel isn't just a harmless distraction. It's a primary source of our anxiety and dissatisfaction, pulling us out of the only moment we ever truly have any agency over, the present one. The Stoics recognized this fundamental human tendency and offered a powerful antidote in our 10th mental habit, the disciplined practice of immersing ourselves fully in the present moment. Seneca, in his profound letters, cut straight to the heart of the matter. He observed, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today." The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. He isn't telling us to be irresponsible or to neglect planning. He is revealing a deep truth about the nature of our control. We can plan for the future with our rational mind, but we can only ever act in the present. To sacrifice the palpable reality of now for the phantom uncertainties of later is to miss the very substance of life as it happens. This Stoic focus on the present is far more than a simple mindfulness technique. It is a radical acceptance of reality. The past is a set of memories and the future is a set of possibilities, but both are essentially fictions we construct in our minds. They are stories. The only tangible reality is the current moment, the feel of your breath, the task in front of you, the person you are with right now. When we abandon this moment to dwell elsewhere, we are effectively choosing to live in a story rather than in reality. The Stoic goal is to anchor yourself so firmly in the here and now that the storms of past regret and future worry simply lose their power to capsize your peace. You begin to see that your life is not something that happens later, after you've achieved a certain goal or resolved a certain problem. Your life is what is happening right now in this very breath. To make this practical, consider a common modern scenario: washing the dishes. For most of us, this is a chore to be rushed through, an empty interval to be filled with planning the next day or listening to a podcast. Our hands are in the soapy water, but our mind is already at tomorrow's deadline. The Stoic practice would be to bring your entire attention back to the task itself. Feel the warmth of the water on your skin. Notice the shimmer of the bubbles and the smooth texture of the plate. Hear the sound of the clinking glasses. There is no other task but this one. In doing this, you accomplish something extraordinary. You transform a mundane chore into a practice in presence. You are no longer rushing through life to get to the good parts. You are recognizing that the very act of being fully engaged is the good part. This same principle applies to every activity, from drinking a cup of coffee to listening to a friend. When you are fully there, you are not just doing the activity better. You are experiencing a deeper, richer version of your own life, free from the static of past and future. This habit is the ultimate application of the dichotomy of control. The present moment is the only arena where your control is absolute. You cannot change a past action, but you can choose your present response to the memory of it. You cannot guarantee a future outcome, but you can choose your present effort toward it. By focusing on the now, you are channeling 100% of your energy into the only field where you can actually affect change. It is the most efficient and peaceful way to live, so I invite you to try a small but profound experiment today. Choose a single, simple activity, perhaps sipping your morning tea, walking to your car, or even just sitting quietly for 10 minutes. For that brief period, make a conscious decision to be completely there. When your mind inevitably wanders to a worry or a plan, gently guide it back to the sensations of the present, the taste, the feeling of movement, the rhythm of your breath. Don't judge the wandering, just practice the returning. This isn't about achieving a perfect state of Zen. It's about exercising the mental muscle of attention. You might be surprised to find that within that simple act of presence lies a quiet kind of joy that you've been overlooking all along. How many times have you said something in the heat of the moment, only to feel a pang of regret the instant the words left your mouth? That feeling, that sudden awareness that you've added fuel to a fire rather than calming it, is a universal human experience. It's in these moments that we recognize the immense power of our words and the profound, often overlooked power of our silence. This brings us to our 11th mental habit, a practice that the Stoics considered a fundamental pillar of wisdom: the conscious restraint of speech and the cultivation of thoughtful silence. In a world that constantly encourages us to voice every opinion and react to every stimulus, the Stoic chooses a different path. They understand that speaking is easy, but true strength lies in the disciplined ability to listen, to process, and to speak only when it is truly necessary and virtuous to do so. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who placed immense emphasis on self-control, offered some of the most direct advice on this subject. He famously said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This isn't just a clever aphorism, it's a practical guide for daily living. He went even further, warning his students of the dangers of an unguarded tongue. He taught, if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. Do not wish to be thought to know everything. What he's pointing to is our deep-seated egoic need to be right, to be seen as knowledgeable, to have the last word. This need is often the root of impulsive speech. We jump into conversations not to contribute something of value, but to assert our own presence and importance. The Stoic practice of silence is, therefore, not about suppressing your voice, but about conquering this ego. It's about valuing understanding over being understood and harmony over winning. This principle transforms from a philosophical idea into a practical superpower in the midst of a heated argument. Imagine a common domestic scenario. You and your partner are having a disagreement about finances. Voices are rising, and you feel a sharp retort forming on your lips, a comment designed to win the point, but that you know will be deeply hurtful. The automatic, habitual response is to fire that verbal arrow. But if you have been practicing Stoic restraint, you create a crucial moment of pause between the impulse and the action. In that sliver of silence, you ask yourself the Stoic questions: is what I am about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Will it improve the situation or simply serve my pride? More often than not, you will find that the answer is no. By choosing to swallow that hasty word and simply listen, you do something remarkable. You stop the negative feedback loop of conflict dead in its tracks. Your silence becomes a space for de-escalation, a calm in the center of the emotional storm that allows both of you to reset. The argument doesn't necessarily vanish, but it is now happening on a foundation of respect rather than retaliation, making a real resolution possible. This habit extends far beyond preventing arguments. It applies to gossip in the break room, to offering unsolicited advice to a friend, or to feeling the need to comment on every single post on social media. Each time we speak, we expend energy and create ripples in the world. The Stoic asks whether those ripples will be constructive or merely disruptive. Thoughtful silence conserves your energy for when it truly matters and ensures that when you do choose to speak, your words carry weight, integrity, and purpose. People will begin to listen more intently because they know you don't speak just to hear your own voice. So I encourage you to turn this into a personal experiment for the next 24 hours. Make a conscious decision to observe your own speech patterns without judgment. Simply notice. How often do you speak to fill an awkward silence? How often do you interrupt someone because you're eager to share your own idea? How often does a conversation leave you feeling drained because it was more about competing monologues than genuine dialogue? And most importantly, can you identify just one moment today where choosing silence over speech would have created more peace for yourself and for those around you? We build our lives around the idea of permanence, don't we? We accumulate possessions, forge relationships, and build careers on the unspoken assumption that they will last, that the ground beneath our feet is solid and unchanging. And yet, if we pause for just a moment to look, we see that everything around us is in a constant, gentle state of flux. The seasons turn, technology evolves, children grow, and our own bodies slowly change with each passing year. This is not a morbid observation, it is the fundamental nature of reality. Our 12th mental habit, accepting impermanence, invites us to stop resisting this universal truth and instead to make it a central pillar of our peace of mind. The Stoics didn't see this as a cause for despair, but as the ultimate source of liberation from fear and the key to a deeper appreciation of the present moment. Marcus Aurelius, who witnessed the relentless rise and fall of fortunes, the deaths of loved ones, and the constant change within his own empire, returned to this theme again and again in his private writings. He offered himself this stark but comforting reminder: keep in mind that everything that exists is already fraying at the edges and in transition, subject to fragmentation and to rot. He isn't trying to depress himself, he is inoculating his mind against the shock of loss. By consciously remembering that nothing lasts, he was able to hold the things and people he loved with a lighter, more grateful grip. He could enjoy them fully without the underlying anxiety of needing them to last forever. This practice transforms our relationship with the world. Instead of clinging desperately to things as they are, we learn to flow with things as they change, appreciating the beauty of each fleeting phase for what it is. This profound shift in perspective has immediate, practical applications in navigating life's inevitable losses. Consider the deep ache that follows the end of a significant relationship. The pain often stems not just from the loss itself, but from the shattered illusion of permanence. We had built a future in our minds with that person, a future that now feels stolen. The Stoic habit of accepting impermanence asks us to reframe this experience. Rather than seeing the relationship as a failed permanent state, we can choose to see it as a beautiful, temporary chapter that ran its natural course. It served its purpose for a time, teaching us lessons about love and ourselves, and its ending does not negate the value it held. This doesn't erase the grief. Healthy grief is a natural response to loss, but it prevents the grief from curdling into bitterness or a prolonged sense of betrayal. It allows us to honor what was without demanding that it should have been something else. The same principle applies to a sudden job loss or a career setback. Our identity is often so intertwined with our profession that when it is taken away, it can feel like a part of us has died. We rage against the injustice, we fear the uncertainty, and we cling to the identity of who we were in that role. Remembering impermanence gently loosens that tight grip. It allows us to see that no job is forever, that all industries change, and that this ending is not a final verdict on our worth, but simply a transition, a difficult, perhaps unwanted, but natural transition in the long arc of a working life. This mindset creates a space for resilience. Instead of being frozen in fear, we can begin to adapt. We can ask, if that chapter is closed, what might the next one hold? This is not naive optimism. It is the pragmatic strength that comes from accepting the fundamental impermanent nature of all things, including our own careers. This habit is ultimately about trading the heavy burden of control for the light freedom of appreciation. When we stop demanding that people and situations remain static, we start to see them with fresh eyes, cherishing them precisely because we know they are temporary. The vacation becomes more vivid because we know it will end. The simple dinner with family becomes more meaningful because we know our children won't always be this age. Even the challenges become more manageable because we know they too are passing storms. So I invite you to take a quiet moment and bring to mind one thing you are deeply attached to. Perhaps a person, a possession, or even a specific life circumstance you fear losing. Now, rather than pushing that fear away, gently hold the object of your attachment in your mind and acknowledge its temporary nature. It is here now, and you can be grateful for it, but it will not always be. How does this conscious acceptance, this gentle release of the demand for permanence, change the quality of your relationship with it? Does it bring a slight sense of peace, a more profound gratitude, or perhaps a newfound freedom to enjoy it without the shadow of future loss? It's a peculiar human tendency to focus so intently on the single thing we lack that we become blind to the countless things we already possess. We chase the next promotion, the newer car, the bigger house, convinced that these acquisitions will finally bring us lasting contentment, only to find that the goalposts of our desire have already moved again. This endless cycle of wanting is a primary source of our dissatisfaction, and it's exactly what the Stoics sought to counter with our 13th mental habit, the daily practice of gratitude. For philosophers like Epictetus and Seneca, gratitude was not a fleeting feeling of thanks. It was a disciplined, rational practice, a powerful antidote to the poison of endless desire, and a direct pathway to genuine, lasting contentment. Epictetus, who lived a life of simplicity and often hardship, placed immense importance on this shift in perspective. He advised his students, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." This statement cuts to the very heart of the Stoic approach to gratitude. It is a conscious decision to redirect your attention from what is absent to what is present. It is the rational understanding that your peace of mind does not depend on acquiring more, but on fully appreciating what you already have. Seneca, a man of great wealth, practiced this with equal rigor, understanding that taking things for granted was the quickest way to lose the joy they provide. He reminded us that it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. True wealth, in the Stoic sense, is not an abundance of possessions, but a poverty of desires. By regularly acknowledging your blessings, you systematically shrink your desires and expand your sense of sufficiency. The practical application of this habit is beautifully simple and incredibly effective. One of the most powerful methods is the evening gratitude journal. This isn't about writing a lengthy essay. It's about taking 2 minutes before bed to physically write down 3 specific things you were grateful for that day. The physical act of writing is important. It makes the abstract thought concrete. The Stoic twist is to be as specific as possible. Instead of writing "my family," you might write, "the genuine laugh my son had when we played in the yard this afternoon." Instead of "my job," you could write, "the feeling of accomplishment after finally solving that persistent problem at work." This specificity forces you to relive the positive moment, etching it deeper into your consciousness and training your brain to actively scan your day for good things, however small they may seem. This practice also works wonders in the heat of a frustrating moment. You're stuck in traffic, late for an appointment, and feeling your stress levels spike. Instead of spiraling into anger and frustration, you can deploy a quick mental gratitude list. What 3 things can you be grateful for in this exact moment? Perhaps it's the reliable car that gets you from place to place, the podcast you're listening to that is enriching your mind, or even the simple fact that you have a destination to go to and people who are expecting you. This isn't about pretending the traffic isn't annoying. It's about putting that annoyance into its proper perspective, surrounded and dwarfed by a multitude of things that are quietly going right. It is a conscious recalibration of your focus, a deliberate choice to feed the thoughts of abundance rather than the thoughts of lack. The ultimate goal of this Stoic habit is to rewire your default perception of the world. You begin to notice the extraordinary in the ordinary, the warm cup of coffee in the morning, the functioning technology that connects you to loved ones, the comfortable bed you sleep in. These are not trivial entitlements. They are modern miracles, and the daily practice of gratitude reveals them as such. It transforms your life from a relentless pursuit of what's next into a deep appreciation of what's now. So, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I invite you to press pause for just 30 seconds. Let your eyes settle on something in your immediate environment. It could be the device you're watching this on, the chair you're sitting in, or even the simple fact that you have the time and curiosity to engage with these ideas. What are 3 specific things you can be genuinely grateful for in this very moment? Have you ever noticed how a single piece of praise can send your confidence soaring, while a bit of criticism can make it plummet just as fast? We tend to ride a roller coaster of emotions, feeling like a genius when things go our way and a failure when they don't, as if our entire worth is dictated by the latest external result. This emotional volatility is exhausting, and it places our happiness in the hands of a world we cannot control. The Stoics offered a far more stable and empowering alternative, which is our 14th mental habit, the conscious cultivation of equanimity, that steady, unshakable inner balance that remains firm through both success and failure. They believed that true peace isn't found by avoiding life's ups and downs, but by learning to navigate them without being capsized by either. This profound stability comes from a radical redefinition of what actually matters. For the Stoic, the only true good is a virtuous character acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. Everything else, the promotions, the rejections, the public acclaim, the social slights, are classified as indifference. This doesn't mean they are unimportant or that we shouldn't prefer them. It means they have no direct power to make us good or bad people. Your value is determined by your effort and your integrity, not by the outcome. A project can fail spectacularly even if you gave it your absolute best, and in the Stoic view, that project is a neutral event while your dedicated effort is a genuine success. Conversely, you might receive a promotion through luck or office politics without having earned it through virtue, making the promotion a neutral event that says nothing about your character. By decoupling your self-worth from these external markers, you build an internal gyroscope that keeps you level no matter how the world tilts and turns. Seneca, who advised the powerful Emperor Nero and witnessed the wildest swings of fortune, wrote extensively about this necessary inner fortitude. He observed, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." His point is not that life is miserable, but that change and challenge are its inherent nature. To expect otherwise is to set yourself up for constant disappointment. He continues with the solution, advising us that the wise person will not be puffed up in prosperity nor cast down in adversity, for he has always endeavored to depend chiefly upon himself and to derive all his joys from himself. This is the essence of equanimity, building a self-contained source of joy and validation that is immune to the fickle opinions of others and the unpredictable winds of luck. Let's bring this into a scenario we all know too well: performance feedback at work. Imagine you present a project you've poured your heart into. Your manager offers a mix of praise and constructive criticism. The non-stoic, reactive mind immediately latches onto one part, either glowing from the praise and ignoring the feedback, or seething over the criticism and discounting the positive. Your entire sense of competence for the day swings on this single opinion. The Stoic approach, aiming for equanimity, would be to receive the entire evaluation with calm detachment. You would listen actively, accepting the praise with gratitude but not letting it inflate your ego, as it is an external judgment. You would consider the criticism with open curiosity, extracting any useful data for improvement without letting it wound your self-worth, as it is also an external judgment. Your internal scorecard remains focused on the only thing that truly matters. Did you prepare with diligence? Did you act with integrity? Did you do your best with the resources you had? If the answer is yes, then the feedback, whether positive or negative, is simply information to be processed, not a verdict on your soul. You can walk out of that room feeling exactly the same as when you walked in, centered, capable, and in control of your own narrative. This practice transforms your relationship with achievement itself. You begin to pursue goals for the intrinsic value of the effort and the growth it provides, not for the trophy at the end. A writer learns to love the discipline of writing each day, finding joy in the craft itself, rather than pinning their happiness on a future bestseller list or a critic's review. An athlete learns to value the daily grind of training, the commitment to excellence more than the final score of any single game. This doesn't make you less competitive, it makes you more resilient. You become a far more formidable competitor because you are no longer paralyzed by the fear of failure or intoxicated by the thrill of success. You are simply focused on executing with virtue, play after play, day after day. The outcome is then free to be whatever it will be, and you are free to remain yourself regardless. So take a moment to look back on your recent past. Identify one event you labeled a clear win or a clear loss, a successful sale, a rejected proposal, a compliment on your cooking, an argument you didn't handle well. Now gently separate the external outcome from your internal effort. Can you see how the two are not the same? How might holding that event more lightly, as a neutral occurrence that provided experience rather than a definition of your worth, change your emotional relationship to it and free you to move forward with greater calm and purpose? From the moment we wake up to the second we fall asleep, we are consuming. Our eyes scan news feeds and social media updates. Our ears absorb podcasts and conversations, and our bodies take in food and drink, each piece of input entering not just our devices or our stomachs, but our very minds, shaping our thoughts, our moods, and ultimately our character. This constant stream of consumption is the water we swim in, so pervasive that we rarely stop to consider its quality or its ultimate effect on our inner peace. The Stoics, living in an age of far less information but no less distraction, identified this as a critical frontier for self-mastery. They understood that what we allow into our minds is just as important as what we choose to eat or drink. It becomes the raw material from which our judgments and emotions are formed. Epictetus, with his piercing clarity, framed this responsibility perfectly. He advised, "Be careful to leave your sons well instructed rather than rich, for the hopes of the instructed are better than the wealth of the ignorant." While he spoke of formal education, the deeper principle applies directly to our own self-instruction through daily consumption. He is telling us that the most valuable inheritance we can give ourselves is a well-guarded, wisely curated mind, because true wealth is found in peace and clarity, not in the chaotic accumulation of external stimuli. This philosophy moves far beyond a simple recommendation to unplug. It is a call for radical intentionality. The Stoic goal is not to live in an information-free vacuum, but to become the vigilant gatekeeper of our own mental citadel. Every piece of content, every conversation, every meal presents a choice. Will this input fortify my character and contribute to my tranquility, or will it agitate my desires, inflame my fears, and pull me into dramas that are not my own? Epictetus drives this point home with a powerful metaphor. He said, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." This is a crucial distinction. Mindless consumption treats the mind like a passive container, dumping in whatever is most readily available, often the sensational, the angry, the fearful, or the trivial. This doesn't kindle a fire, it creates a chaotic, smoky mess. Stoic consumption, on the other hand, is about carefully selecting the fuel that will generate a warm, steady, and illuminating flame, the flame of reasoned judgment and virtuous action. Let's translate this ancient wisdom into a very modern dilemma, the daily news cycle. It's easy to fall into the habit of scrolling through a curated feed of headlines designed to trigger outrage, anxiety, or a morbid curiosity. We might tell ourselves we're staying informed, but the Stoic would ask a more probing question. Is this consumption informing my ability to act with virtue, or is it simply informing my sense of dread about things overwhelmingly outside my control? The mindful alternative isn't ignorance, it's selectivity. It might mean choosing to read a single, in-depth analysis from a reputable source once a day instead of refreshing a breaking news feed every hour. It could mean consciously following accounts that focus on solutions and human progress alongside those that report on problems. This shift in consumption isn't about avoiding reality. It's about engaging with it in a way that leaves you clear-headed enough to actually contribute positively to your own small corner of the world, rather than paralyzed by the vastness of the world's problems. This principle of mindful consumption extends powerfully to our social diets as well. Consider the conversations you engage in or overhear. Is the office breakroom gossip fueling judgment and division, or are your interactions with colleagues building understanding and cooperation? Even our entertainment choices are a form of consumption. A movie that explores deep human themes like courage, loyalty, or redemption can be a form of fuel that kindles our own virtuous fire, while mindlessly binge-watching content that glorifies greed, cynicism, or violence is like pouring low-grade fuel into a high-performance engine. It will eventually lead to knock and sputter in your own moral reasoning. The goal is to move from being a passive consumer, whatever the medium, to an active curator of your mental ecosystem. So I invite you to conduct a small but revealing audit of your own consumption this week. Pick one single source, perhaps the first app you open in the morning, the podcast you listen to on your commute, or even the conversations you tend to initiate with a particular friend. For just 3 days, observe it with the detached curiosity of a Stoic philosopher. After you engage with this source, ask yourself a simple set of questions. Do I feel more anxious or more at peace, more connected to humanity or more separate, more inspired to act with virtue or more inclined to withdraw? More clear-headed or more scattered, the answers are your data. They are not meant to induce guilt but to empower choice. You may discover that a particular news source you thought was essential is actually eroding your peace without adding any actionable insight. You might find that a certain podcast, while entertaining, leaves your mind feeling cluttered and agitated. This awareness is the first and most important step. It grants you the power to then make a conscious choice to adjust the dosage, change the source, or even eliminate that input entirely, replacing it with something that truly nourishes your mind and supports the resilient, tranquil character you are working to build. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche gave us a powerful phrase that has captivated thinkers for over a century, but its roots dig deep into ancient Stoic soil. He wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati. That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it." This idea of loving one's fate wasn't a new invention. It was a brilliant articulation of a principle that Stoics like Marcus Aurelius had been living for centuries. For the Stoic, acceptance was never meant to be a passive resignation, a heavy sigh of defeat in the face of life's difficulties. It was an active, vibrant, and wholehearted embrace, a conscious decision to not only accept what happens but to welcome it, to see it as the very material you need to become who you are meant to be. This is the essence of our 16th mental habit, the profound practice of Amor Fati. The translation from Latin is simple, love of fate, but its application is a lifetime's work. It means looking at every single event in your life, the joyous and the devastating, and choosing to believe that it is not only necessary but beneficial for your growth. It is the ultimate rejection of the thought, "This shouldn't be happening to me," and the adoption of the thought, "This is happening for me." Marcus Aurelius, who faced plague, war, and betrayal, embodied this mindset completely. He didn't just endure his fate, he sought to find its purpose. He wrote in his meditations, A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. This is the Stoic vision of Amor Fati. The events of your life are the fuel. Your virtuous character is the blazing fire, and a well-tended fire doesn't complain about the quality of the wood. It uses it all to burn brighter and warmer. To understand how this works in practice, let's move from the philosophical to the practical. Imagine you had meticulously planned a weekend getaway. You've been looking forward to it for weeks, a chance to unwind and reconnect. Then, at the last moment, a family obligation arises and your trip is cancelled. The automatic, habitual response is frustration and disappointment. You might spend the entire weekend sulking, mentally comparing the dull reality to the exciting escape that was stolen from you. Now apply Amor Fati. Instead of fighting against this new reality, you lean into it with curiosity and acceptance. You fully embrace the cancelled plans. This shift in perspective opens up a world of possibilities that your frustration had blinded you to. That free weekend becomes an unexpected gift of time. You might finally tackle that bookshelf you've been meaning to build, have a long, meaningful conversation with a family member you've been too busy for, or simply enjoy the rare luxury of a completely unstructured day at home. The obstacle of the cancelled trip didn't block your path to a good weekend. It became the path to a different and perhaps even more meaningful one. By loving your fate in that moment, you transformed a disappointment into an opportunity. This practice is the highest form of the Stoic art of reframing. It takes the core principles of focusing on what you can control and seeing obstacles as opportunities, and fuses them into a single, powerful attitude toward life itself. It's not about pretending that painful events don't hurt. It's about trusting that even the pain has a role to play in your development, forging resilience, deepening empathy, or redirecting your life toward a better path. Amor Fati is the decision to be a co-author of your life story with the universe, rather than a critic who constantly complains about the plot twists. So I want to invite you to try on this mindset with a recent event. Bring to mind something that happened in your life that you initially resisted, a change at work that felt disruptive, a personal rejection that stung, an unexpected bill that caused stress. Now, for just a moment, suspend your judgment of it as a bad thing. Ask yourself the Stoic question: if I were to love this event, what could it be trying to teach me? How might it be strengthening me? What door might it be closing so that a better one could open? How might embracing it, rather than resisting it, change the entire emotional narrative of that experience and free you to find the hidden gift within it? It's remarkable how a single email, a critical comment, or a minor mistake at work can swell in our minds until it completely blocks out the rest of our world, feeling like an insurmountable catastrophe in the moment. We lose all sense of scale, treating a spilled cup of coffee with the same emotional weight as a genuine life crisis. This mental myopia is a primary source of our daily anxiety, and it's precisely what the Stoics sought to correct with our 17th mental habit, a powerful technique known as the view from above. This is the practice of consciously zooming out from the narrow lens of immediate concerns to gain a cosmic perspective on our lives, seeing our problems within the vast, sweeping context of time and space. It's a mental shift that doesn't dismiss our challenges, but rather frames them in their proper proportion, instantly draining them of their exaggerated power to disturb our peace. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this technique, constantly using it to ground himself amidst the immense pressures of leading an empire. He would regularly retreat into his mind and construct a breathtakingly vast panorama to gain clarity. In his meditations, he guides himself through this very process, writing, Keep constantly in mind how all things such as they now are, in time past also were, and consider that they will be the same again. And place before your eyes whole dramas and scenes of the same form, for so will you be able to perceive the nothingness of all human things. He isn't advocating for a cold, nihilistic dismissal of life. He is offering a profound antidote to self-importance. By mentally ascending to a point where he could see the entire theater of human history, the endless rise and fall of empires, the generations of people who loved, worried, and died just as we do, his own fleeting troubles were revealed for what they were: small, temporary waves on a vast, ancient ocean. This practice transforms from a philosophical idea into a tangible tool for immediate relief. Imagine you're at work and you make a significant error in a report just before a major meeting. The initial wave of panic is visceral. Your heart races, your mind spirals into visions of professional ruin and embarrassment. This is the view from the ground, where the mistake looms like a mountain. Now consciously engage the view from above. Close your eyes for just 10 seconds and pull your mental camera back. See yourself in your office building. Now pull back further, seeing your city as a map, then your country, then the entire planet spinning in the vast blackness of space. Now pull back through time. This report, this meeting, this job, where will they be in 1 year, in 5 years, in a century? You are a tiny, brief, and beautiful flash of consciousness on a small rock orbiting a mediocre star, and you are fortunate enough to be alive. From this immense vantage point, is the mistake in the report truly a catastrophe? Or is it a simple, correctable error, a minor event in the long narrative of your life? The problem hasn't changed, but your perspective on it has been utterly revolutionized. The anxiety dissipates, replaced by a calm clarity that allows you to focus on the solution rather than the fear. The true power of this habit is that it doesn't require your circumstances to change. It only requires your point of view to shift. It is the ultimate application of the Stoic principle that we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments about them. The view from above is a tool for adjusting that judgment, for recalibrating your emotional scale to match the actual size of the event. It's a way of returning to the present moment with a lighter heart and a clearer mind, ready to handle your small human problems with grace, precisely because you have remembered that, in the grand scheme of the cosmos, that is exactly what they are. So I encourage you to try this profound exercise right now. Bring to mind a current concern that feels heavy or overwhelming. It could be a financial worry, a relational tension, or a professional anxiety. Now close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. With each exhale, imagine your perspective rising higher and higher above your immediate situation, seeing it shrink in size and significance against the backdrop of your entire life, the history of humanity, and the unimaginable scale of the universe. How does this shift in vantage point change the emotional weight of that concern? Does it feel as absolute and permanent as it did a moment ago? We live in a world of instant everything, instant messages, instant meals, instant entertainment. This constant availability of immediate satisfaction has quietly rewired our expectations, making the very idea of waiting feel like a personal affront, a glitch in the system of modern life. Yet, it is this reflexive impatience that so often derails our most meaningful pursuits, convincing us to abandon a difficult path the moment we don't see rapid results. The Stoics recognized this human tendency and positioned its opposite, patient endurance, as a non-negotiable virtue for anyone seeking a life of wisdom and lasting accomplishment. For thinkers like Seneca, patience was not a passive state of waiting. It was an active, muscular form of endurance, the disciplined ability to persist in a valued endeavor despite the absence of any immediate reward. He understood that all things of real worth, mastering a craft, building a strong character, deepening a relationship operate on a timeline that is utterly indifferent to our personal desire for speed. Seneca, who watched the ambitious and impatient of Rome rise and fall with startling rapidity, wrote extensively about the quiet power of those who understand the value of time. In one of his letters, he offers this crucial insight: every great achievement is the triumph of persistence. Notice he doesn't say it's a triumph of genius, luck, or speed. It is persistence. He is telling us that the soil in which virtue and wisdom grow is not quick-drying concrete, but the slow, rich compost of sustained effort. The farmer who plants a seed does not dig it up every day to check on its progress. He trusts the process, provides consistent care, and has the patience to allow the natural, invisible work underground to unfold. Our own growth, whether in skill or in character, follows the same natural law. The impatience that leads us to constantly check for results, to switch strategies at the first sign of difficulty, or to abandon a goal entirely is a form of digging up the seed. It guarantees that nothing will ever have the time to take root and flourish. Consider the all too common experience of deciding to learn a completely new skill, like playing a musical instrument or speaking a foreign language. The initial excitement is electric. You make a little progress and it feels incredible, but then, inevitably, you hit the plateau. The scales don't get any easier, the new vocabulary doesn't stick, and your progress seems to grind to a halt. This is the critical juncture where impatience makes its move. It whispers that you're not talented enough, that it's taking too long, that your time would be better spent on something else. The Stoic response, however, is to see this plateau not as a wall but as the essential training ground for your patience. This is where the real work happens, not when it's easy and exciting, but when it's difficult and dull. The person cultivating patience will adjust their expectation. They will commit to practicing for just 20 minutes a day, not with the goal of becoming a maestro by next month, but with the goal of honoring the commitment itself. They find satisfaction in the act of showing up, in the discipline of the effort, trusting that the results are the inevitable byproduct of consistency over a long period. They are playing the long game, and in doing so, they are not only building a skill but also forging a far more valuable asset, a patient and resilient character. This practice of delayed gratification extends far beyond personal hobbies into the very core of our relationships and careers. A difficult conversation with a loved one requires the patience to listen deeply without immediately formulating a defense. Building a successful business demands the patience to build systems and trust, far removed from the fantasy of an overnight sensation. Even the pursuit of inner peace itself is a long-term investment, built one mindful moment, one restrained reaction, one evening review at a time. The rewards are not always visible today or tomorrow, but they compound with silent power over months and years. So bring to mind one important goal in your own life that feels like it's moving too slowly, perhaps a fitness journey, a creative project, or mending a strained relationship. What would it look like to release the demand for a quick resolution and instead fall in love with the daily process itself? Could you find a small piece of that goal to patiently tend to today, not for the sake of the result, but simply for the virtue of practicing patience itself? But what if the key to true freedom isn't getting everything you want, but in consciously choosing from time to time not to? We live in a culture that celebrates instant gratification, where every craving from a new gadget to a sugary snack can be satisfied with a few clicks or a short drive. This constant, automatic indulgence feels like freedom, but the Stoics would argue it's a subtle and sophisticated form of slavery to our every whim and desire. This brings us to our 19th mental habit, a practice that seems counterintuitive but is incredibly liberating, the deliberate and voluntary practice of self-denial in small things. This isn't about adopting a life of miserable deprivation. It's about engaging in targeted, temporary acts of saying no to your desires to prove to yourself, beyond any doubt, that you are the one in command. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who prized self-mastery above all else, framed this idea with his characteristic power. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This simple statement contains a universe of wisdom. He is telling us that external freedom, the freedom to do what you want, is meaningless if you are internally a slave to your impulses. If a desire arises and you feel compelled to satisfy it immediately, who is truly in charge, you or the desire? The habit of small self-denials is the training ground where you reclaim that command. It's like a mental fire drill. You don't wait for the 5-alarm fire of a real crisis to see if you know how to escape. You practice when it's safe, so you're prepared when it's not. Each time you successfully deny a minor craving, you are strengthening your willpower muscle, building the inner fortitude needed to handle life's larger temptations and challenges with unshakable composure. The modern applications of this ancient practice are simple, accessible, and remarkably effective. It's not about grand gestures of austerity. It's about small, intentional interruptions to your automatic patterns. For instance, you might be in the habit of having a dessert every single night after dinner. The desire is there, almost like a reflex. The Stoic practice would be to consciously decide, once or twice a week, to simply skip it. Not because the dessert is bad, but because you are proving to yourself that you can. You are demonstrating that the craving does not have veto power over your decisions. Another powerful example is delaying a purchase. You see something you want, a new book, a piece of clothing, a kitchen gadget. Instead of buying it immediately, you impose a 24 or 48-hour waiting period. In that space, you observe the desire. Does it fade? Do you realize you don't really need it? This practice isn't about never buying things. It's about breaking the chain of impulse that links seeing something to owning it, ensuring your purchases are acts of choice, not compulsion. The ultimate goal of this habit is to create a profound sense of inner freedom. When you know you can comfortably sit with the minor discomfort of a denied craving, you become immune to 1,000 daily manipulations. Advertisements lose their power because you are no longer driven by the need to acquire. Social pressure diminishes because you are not desperate for the approval that comes from conformity. You begin to make choices based on your values and reason, not on the shifting winds of your desires. This creates a stable, quiet confidence that permeates every aspect of your life. You are no longer a passenger on a bus driven by your impulses. You are the one behind the wheel, calmly choosing the route. So today, I invite you to conduct a small experiment in self-command. Identify one tiny, inconsequential desire that arises: the urge to check your phone when you feel a moment of boredom, the impulse to grab a snack when you're not truly hungry, or the want to make a frivolous purchase. When that urge appears, pause for just 5 seconds, acknowledge the desire, and then make a conscious choice to either indulge it or, just this once, to deny it. There's no right or wrong answer. The entire value is in the act of conscious choosing. Simply observe what happens in that space between the impulse and your action. What do you learn about who is truly in charge? It's one of our most deeply ingrained human instincts to look away from the one certainty we all share. We treat the subject of death as a morbid taboo, a dark thought to be suppressed or a distant reality to be ignored for as long as possible. Yet the Stoics, in their radical pursuit of a life well lived, did the exact opposite. They actively and regularly invited this thought into their daily awareness. They called this practice Memento Mori, a Latin phrase that translates to "remember you must die." Far from being a morbid fixation, this 20th mental habit was seen by thinkers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius as the most powerful tool available for clarifying our priorities, dissolving trivial worries, and infusing our present moments with a profound sense of purpose and gratitude. To remember your death is not to dwell on the end, but to fiercely illuminate the value of the time you have now. Seneca, in his profound letters, captured the essence of this practice with stunning clarity. He wrote, "He who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave." Let that sentiment settle for a moment. What does he mean? He is telling us that the fear of death, and by extension the fear of losing anything in life, is a form of slavery. It makes us timid, it makes us cling to security, and it tricks us into postponing our life for a future that is not guaranteed. But when you make peace with your own mortality, when you fully accept the temporary nature of your existence, you are instantly liberated from that fear. You are freed from the petty anxieties of what others think of you, freed from the desperate need to accumulate more and more, and freed to finally start living with authentic courage and intention. The person who remembers death is no longer a slave to the opinions of others or the whims of fortune. They are a free person making conscious choices about how to spend their irreplaceable days. This philosophy transforms from an abstract concept into a tangible force for change when we see it applied to the fabric of our daily decisions. Imagine a person who has just received a frightening but ultimately benign health scare, a reminder of their own vulnerability. For a few days afterward, their entire perspective shifts. The trivial frustrations of their commute suddenly seem insignificant. The urge to scroll mindlessly through social media is replaced by a desire to call an old friend. The project they've been procrastinating on for months suddenly feels urgent, not out of fear of a deadline, but out of a renewed understanding that their time and energy are precious gifts not to be wasted. This is Memento Mori in action. It isn't about living in a state of fear, it's about living in a state of heightened appreciation and focus. The unimportant fall away, and the important connection, contribution, creation snap into sharp, beautiful focus. The true power of this practice lies in its ability to act as a constant, gentle editor for our lives. It asks us a simple but devastatingly effective question at the start of each day. If today were my last, would I spend it this way? Would I spend these hours worrying about that critical email, or would I spend them playing with my children? Would I waste mental energy resenting a colleague, or would I choose to offer kindness? This question is not meant to inspire a dramatic, reckless abandonment of all responsibility. It is meant to help us distinguish between the necessary and the superfluous, between the actions that align with our deepest values and the ones we perform out of habit or fear. It urges us to have that difficult conversation we've been avoiding, to finally start that project that matters to us, to express our love to the people we care about, not someday but today. The Stoic remembrance of death is, in its final analysis, the ultimate practice of remembering to live. So I invite you to sit with this question for a moment, not as a somber exercise but as a clarifying one. If you carried the conscious awareness that this day held the potential to be your final chapter, what one thing would you make absolutely certain to do? What one thing would you let go of forever? And how can you bring even a fraction of that clarity and purpose into the day that is actually ahead of you right now? Yet for all the profound wisdom contained in these 20 habits, the most crucial insight the Stoics offer is perhaps the simplest one. Knowledge in and of itself is utterly useless without consistent, dedicated practice. You can read every word of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. You can memorize the dichotomy of control, but if this understanding remains locked in the pages of a book or as a fleeting thought, it holds no power to change your life. This is the bridge between philosophy and lived experience, and it's the focus of our final mental habit, the art of integrating these principles into the very fabric of your daily routines. The Stoics weren't interested in creating armchair philosophers. They were dedicated to forging individuals of unshakable character, and they knew that such a transformation only happens through the slow, steady, and often unglamorous work of daily application. It is in the repetition of these small acts, the conscious return to these mental postures again and again, that the quiet reshaping of your future truly occurs. Epictetus, who focused relentlessly on the practical application of philosophy, was brutally honest about this requirement. He warned his students, if you didn't learn these things in order to practice them, what did you learn them for? He is pointing directly to the gap between intellectual understanding and embodied wisdom. You can know that you should only focus on what you can control, but that knowledge means nothing until you actually pause during a moment of road rage and consciously release your grip on the other driver's behavior. You can agree that negative visualization is a powerful tool, but it only becomes real when you use it to genuinely appreciate your health during your morning shower. The goal is not to achieve perfection in every moment, but to engage in the continual practice of returning to these principles, of making them your default setting through relentless repetition. This is how philosophy moves from being something you study to something you are. The most effective way to begin this integration is to resist the overwhelming urge to master all 21 habits at once. That approach is a recipe for fatigue and guaranteed failure. Instead, treat this list as a toolkit, not a checklist. Start with just one. Pick the habit that resonated most deeply with you, the one that immediately brought to mind a specific area of your life where it could make a difference. Perhaps it's the morning reflection, as it offers a structured way to set your daily intentions. Commit to practicing that single habit, and only that one, for the next full week. Don't worry about doing it perfectly. Some mornings you might have only 30 seconds to mentally prepare for the day. That is still a victory. The objective is consistency, not flawlessness. After a week, that habit will begin to feel less like a practice and more like a natural part of your day. It will have started to build its own small foundation of neural pathways. Then, and only then, consider layering in a second habit, perhaps the evening review, to bookend your day. This gradual, layered approach allows each mental muscle to strengthen before adding a new load, ensuring the entire structure is built to last. This final habit is the one that makes all the others possible. It is the meta-habit of commitment itself. It's the quiet decision you make each day to choose the harder right over the easier wrong, to pause before reacting, to reflect instead of regretting. It is the understanding that a single cold shower doesn't build resilience, but the practice of taking them regularly does. A single act of gratitude is nice, but a daily practice of it rewires your brain for contentment. The power is never in the grand, sweeping gesture, but in the cumulative impact of 1,000 small, consistent choices. Your future is not shaped by the books you've read or the videos you've watched. It is forged in the countless, invisible moments where you choose to apply what you've learned. So as we conclude this exploration, the most important question is not which habit is the best, but which one will be yours. Which of these 21 mental tools will you take off the shelf, dust off, and put to work starting today to begin the quiet, deliberate work of reshaping your tomorrow? And so we arrive at the end of our journey through these 21 mental habits, but in truth, this is not an ending at all, it is a beginning. What we've explored together is far more than a simple list of tips. It is a comprehensive blueprint for the quiet, daily renovation of the self, drawn from the deepest wells of Stoic wisdom. Each habit, from the morning reflection to the evening review, from differentiating control to embracing Amor Fati, is a single thread. Woven together day after day, they form an unbreakable tapestry of resilience, clarity, and purpose that can fundamentally reshape your future. These practices teach us that we may not control the waves that crash against us, but we can absolutely learn to build a sturdier ship and become a more skilled captain, able to navigate any sea with greater grace and fortitude. The true magic, and perhaps the most counterintuitive Stoic secret, lies in the power of the small. We often believe that profound change requires grand, sweeping gestures, a complete life overhaul, a dramatic turning point. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that the future is built not in the earthquake or the hurricane, but in the gentle, consistent drip of daily practice. It is the 5 minutes of morning reflection, the conscious pause before speaking in anger, the momentary decision to find the opportunity within an obstacle. These are the tiny, almost invisible choices that compound over weeks, months, and years into a character of unshakable strength. As Marcus Aurelius so perfectly captured this cumulative power, the universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it. Your life is quite literally being made by the thoughts you choose to cultivate each day. The simple act of consistently tending to your mind is the most powerful form of world building there is. Now, the work of integrating this wisdom falls to you. This isn't about attempting to adopt all 21 habits at once. That would be a recipe for overwhelm. Instead, I encourage you to listen back to your own intuition. Which one of these practices resonated with you most deeply? Perhaps it was the mental shift of seeing obstacles as fuel for growth, or the calming perspective of the view from above. Maybe it was the practical relief of focusing only on what you can control. Whatever it was, that resonance is your inner compass pointing you toward your starting point. Choose that one habit, commit to practicing it, just that single one, for the next week. Don't seek perfection, seek consistency. Notice how it begins to subtly alter your reactions, your perceptions, and your days. That single thread, pulled consistently, will begin to unravel old patterns and weave a new, more resilient way of being. This journey is not one we make alone. For centuries, people have turned to Stoicism not just for personal peace, but to become better friends, parents, colleagues, and citizens, to contribute to a more rational and compassionate world. If these ideas have sparked something within you, I invite you to join a community of like-minded seekers. Subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into practical philosophy that you can use in your modern life. And most importantly, share your own experiences in the comments below. Which habit are you starting with? What challenges are you facing? What small victories have you noticed? Your story could be the very thing that inspires someone else to begin their own transformation. Together, we can build a supportive hive, reminding each other that the path to a better future is built one quiet, thoughtful, and virtuous moment at a time. Thank you for watching, and may your journey be a